Hey, my name is Alex McMichael, and if you asked me if in the past 4 days I've been doing what I need to do to get myself closer to my goals, I would probably tell you no. And without going into the reasons why that is, and the obligations I've created myself, ultimately that's all gonna just be excuses because the time it takes for me to do something like this is about 25 minutes. Write down some thoughts, record 10 minutes of content, and ultimately that's really easy. If you can't find 25 minutes in your day somewhere, you're just lost in the sauce, and you need to start realizing where you're spending your time, and maybe writing that down is a really good way, just in a financial sense. That's really easy to take account of where every cent is going. But if we take the day and we think of it as the same thing, it's the money we're spending. Every second that you pass is a dollar spent. You don't really have a constant transaction statement of at 10:12 you did this, at 11:29 you did this. But on a statement sheet, an account, you can see oh, clearly I'm spending too much money on fast food. Or in the context of time, clearly I'm spending too much time on social media. And I think that's usually the big one, but there's tons of other things. And it makes it difficult to do the actions you need to move towards your goals and to things that you think are worthwhile. And so what I want to talk about today is figuring out your why. Why are you doing something? Ultimately, what's the deeply rooted reasons? In business, obviously it's I want to make money, but why? How is that going to change your life? And so being able to ask yourself who am I going to become at the end of this? Because that's ultimately what it is. Entrepreneurship is just building yourself as it's the ultimate self-development journey, because you can only create a business that is as developed as you as the entrepreneur, as the owner is. And oftentimes at different stages of growth, the CEO or the entrepreneur, the owner, the person who's really pushing this, the person with the vision, is the main blocker. And so being able to grow yourself is a major, that's, I would say, the deeply rooted piece of entrepreneurship. And so if you are able to reel back over the surface levels of oh, I want status, oh, I want money, you got to ask yourselves things what is my life going to look like at the end of this? Who am I going to be at the end of this? You can pick and choose people who are already there, or people that are already in a place that you want to go, right? So you can take guys that are way ahead of you, and you say, okay, what is that guy like? What do I have to do to get to that step, to get to that stage? And work it backwards there. I'm big on this idea of full ownership of everything. And so when you have a solid and deeply rooted why of this is who I want to become, this is what I want my life to look like, and doing these hard things is what's going to get me there, will ultimately propel you through the things and the other obligations. That's the ultimate trump card of now it's I don't everything else in life that's constantly vying for your attention and time. Let's kill that for now. Let's do the things that are hard, that we are innately avoiding because they're hard, and realize this is what I have to do to get to where I want to go. This is why I need to cut out 30 minutes of time to just make a small piece of content. And in business, all businesses now should be doing content. In 2010, Gary Vaynerchuk was saying the same thing. And there's people who are the peanut butter king that's making $60, $70, $100,000 a year talking about peanut butter. And so you don't need to be the Mr. Beast of YouTube or content. You don't need to be a Dan Blazarian either to be these giant people. You could be authentic and be yourself, and realize that along your journey, there's other people that are at the same stage as you and just before you, and so you need to pull those people along with you. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here when I make these. It's I know that I have made mistakes, and I'm trying to relay that so the next guy doesn't have to. That's what Gary Vaynerchuk has done. That's what Alex Hormozi done. There's a ton of guys that do this, and they ultimately find a way to monetize it and get rich beyond most of our wildest dreams. And I think for me, and like why I'm doing this is breaking down just like the overall, like I think innately we don't maybe fully understand how far like $1 million is away from the average person. The average person makes about $65,000-$70,000 in America. Now that's still 1%, worldwide. If you make more than like $30,000 a year worldwide, you're in the top 1%. So even just taking a step back and having gratitude, if you are in America or any of the westernized countries and making $60,000-$70,000, you're doing great already. And so taking that step in gratitude, realizing like I've already made it that far, but also like conceptualizing how far $1 million is, and like the difference between $1 million and $1 billion is kind of insane. So you take that, just to make the math easy, we're gonna say $50,000 a year. That you take a guy that makes $50,000 a year, and it's gonna take him, if he never spends a dime, 20 years. If he starts at 20, by the time he's 40, he's never spent a dime his whole life. Hasn't had to buy any food, hasn't had to have a place to live, never had to buy clothes, never had to go pay for water to wash himself. It would take him 20 years to get there. And that's why I don't think saving will get you there. I mean, eventually, but you have to raise your income to a level that you can actually start making meaningful strides toward that. Even at $100,000 a year, it's 10 years spending no money. Again, that's totally unreasonable. If you look at things like housing prices and even rent, it's kind of insane to literally just rent a place. You have to have $24,000 a year, and so that $100,000, if you're lucky enough to make that, is already cut down by 25%. And then you got to pay for other things, and so if you're living like as frugally as possible, maybe you can save 50 to 60%. And so again, we're in this boat where we're really only saving $50,000 a year. It's still going to take us 20 years to save our way there. But what can we do now to increase our income and get there? And that's like $1 million is far away for most people. And so that's like very hard, very difficult. And the best way to do that is to increase your income. But it's hard to do that. Like all this is hard. And so you need to have a really deeply rooted reason inside of you, like why am I doing this? So just a really quick analogy about there's these two twins. I wish I could credit the author, I don't remember. But there was two twins. One was wildly successful, the other one was homeless. Born in the same house, raised in the same house. Both born and raised poor by their mother. And like this just stark contrast. And so they were asked the same question in this documentary, which is like, obviously you grew up poor, like how'd you end up here? And the poor guy said, well, what choice did I have? I grew up on welfare, that's all I've ever known. But you look at the wildly successful twin brother, and you say like, why'd you get here? Like, you grew up really poor, He says, well, I grew up on welfare, what choice did I have? And the answer is the same, but the conclusion they came to were wildly different. And so I would make the leap that the reason why is also why their differences are so wild. The reason why for the welfare guy is like, oh, poor me, pity me, let me just continue doing what I'm already doing. And the wildly successful guy says, poor me, pity me, I need to do hard things, and that's what's going to push me through hard things. So the reason, like the deeply rooted reason, doesn't really matter that much. It only matters how much it means to you, and if it's going to push you through that difficult time. And being able to have that is like the litmus test of you cutting the fat, like of like the things that you're doing that like take up too much time. How can I, like, is this thing I'm doing right now worthwhile enough, more worthwhile than the thing I ultimately want? And if you can do that, I think you can push through all the hard times, and you're going to be different than 90% of the world, 90% of Americans, in fact, and be able to attain that conceptually crazy number of $1 million. That's all I have time for today. Thanks for watching.